What's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. Today we're playing World of Warcraft again. I'm in the process of leveling a warrior, running some instances. Right now we're doing Zul'Farrak. But while I level my warrior, just had a couple things on my mind, and I wanted to talk about it in a video, see what you guys think. So today's topic is aliens, alien life. Now when I talk about alien life, I'm not talking about little green men that have or have not visited Earth. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm talking about aliens in the broad sense, aliens in the universe. Do aliens exist? That's what I mean by alien life. That's what I'm talking about when I say alien life. Now the odds are, given the size of the universe, given the age of the universe, there is probably some form of alien life out there in the cosmos somewhere. And that's what a lot of people say. A lot of people tend to believe that. Most science-minded people don't really think of that as too controversial. They think it's only a matter of time until we run into alien life, until we meet them. I'm not necessarily disputing that. Where I draw the line in alien life, and there's a big distinction, is between alien life in general. So for example, if we were to find out there was a species of horses on some other planet, or a species of bugs, or bacteria even, some kind of primitive life form, you know, everyone would jump up in for joy and say, you know, we discovered alien life. And yeah, that would be true. But in the sense of intelligent life, I think that is much more improbable of a discovery to make than just a simple life form like bacteria or something like that, or even something such as a horse or some other kind of animal that does not have intelligence. And so that's another distinction I want to make there as well. I think if you look at the case of life on Earth, on this planet, life had to jump through an enormous number of different obstacles and hoops to evolve to the state it is at now. Not only to go from single cellular life to multicellular life to existing basically in water, to moving on to land, breathing oxygen, having an endoskeleton, development of the nervous systems, things like that, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of complexities behind it that should not be overlooked when considering the possibility of aliens existing somewhere in the universe. Now, when you think about it as a probability game, you say that the universe is so big, there's got to be life out there somewhere, and that's, again, not what I'm disputing. It seems like it's likely that there's life out there, but to me, you run into the problem when you start talking about complex, multicellular, and intelligent life forms. It seems highly improbable that there's life out there. Again, I'm open to the possibility. I'm not denying and saying that there isn't life out there. I think we need to take a step back and really analyze what we're talking about here. So one of the things that helps us think about the existence of aliens and extraterrestrial life and intelligent life out there is the Fermi Paradox. It was an idea that was thought up by Enrico Fermi, who basically said that given the vastness of the universe, given the age of the universe, it's highly probable that there would be some kind of intelligent life that has evolved out there somewhere, and as such we should see evidence for it. I'm going to come back to that point in a minute, but just thinking about that, 13.7 billion years, humans have only existed for roughly 200,000 years on this planet. That's nothing in the grand scale of the age of the universe. So imagine there was another life form similar to humans that had evolved even 5 billion years earlier. Alright, so the universe would have already been billions of years old at that point. Now, how advanced would those life forms be? They'd be pretty freaking advanced. Look at how far we've come in 200,000 years. And look at how far we've come in just the past 200 or 300 years from a technological standpoint. We've developed a lot. So it's something to think about. How advanced would they be? And I think it's highly likely that if they were a couple billion years, even a couple 100 million, even 1,000,000 years older than us, it's almost impossible to imagine what kind of technology they would possess, what they would be like, and I have almost no doubt we would see their presence somewhere in the universe. imagine, for instance, in the future we develop robotics and AI technology, and we're able to create probes that self-replicate, go out amongst the universe, explore, reproduce themselves, continue to document, and send data back to Earth, or what have you. They would pretty much populate the galaxy within, a significantly shorter amount of time than has existed in the universe. So, for example, even if it took them 100 million years to, spread throughout this galaxy, and they evolved, the life forms that created them evolved a billion years ago, 100 million years ago, there would be evidence of that. So it seems highly likely if something did exist of the high intelligent order and had the chance to colonize the universe, there would be some form of evidence for it, whether it be some kind of probes, or whether they create some kind of giant superstructure like a Dyson sphere, which envelops a sun. We would be able to detect something like that. So that seems like that would be a possibility, and that would prove, or at least suggest, that there's some kind of life out there. We don't have any evidence of that at all whatsoever. Now, counterclaim you could make to that is we haven't been around long enough to be able to observe the universe, and that's a fair point. Now, humans have only been detecting radio waves for however many 100 years or so we might just not have been looking long enough. But again, given the age of the universe and given the vastness of it, if a life form had developed a significant amount of time in the past, it seems like there would be some kind of evidence for them in the universe. So to me it seems like I wouldn't say it's impossible, it seems like it's highly unlikely. A lot of people talk about life in the universe thinking life is super common, but I don't know. I just don't think it's as common as we think. Don't think it's as common as we think of it to be. Now, going back to the point about the Fermi Paradox, so there's a couple different answers you can come up with to the Fermi Paradox. Again, one of them was we haven't been looking long enough. Kind of touched on that just a second ago. There are other answers or potential answers that people propose, such as the aliens don't want to be discovered, or there are other issues. One of the other interesting ones I think about is the bottleneck theory, which is kind of what I was getting at towards the beginning of this video, where I was talking about the improbability of life evolving and developing, where there are certain bottlenecks and hurdles, and humanity is one of the examples of a species that has overcome some of these bottlenecks. So, for instance, developing from single-cellular life to multicellular life, from microbial bacteria to, land-walking creatures, and so on. Being able to reproduction is another one. And another interesting thing to think about too, another great filter, as they're called, is the presence of natural resources on the planet. Now, a lot of planets do, and you would expect them to have resources on them, but think about it. We use fossil fuels, for instance, as a primary form of energy, and we have for a lot of years. Not to say that that's the only source of energy, but it has been our primary source of energy for a long time, and as we continue to grow, who knows whether we advance beyond that. Probably will, but that was our starting point. And if, for instance, there was another world where some creature was evolving on, they didn't have any kind of fossil fuels or resources to use as energy, maybe they just didn't develop anything. And so they're just kind of trapped. Or another thing you could look at dolphins, for example. What if there was a planet and all the creatures evolved on it, and it was just water, and they were dolphins, or similar to dolphins. Dolphins are very intelligent, they basically have their own language, but they have flippers. They don't have opposable thumbs, they can't create anything. Even though they're very intelligent and very smart, you won't be seeing any dolphins going to the moon anytime soon. So that's a possibility as well, which would be a reason why I wouldn't be able to detect them. But again, something else to think about and consider. Something that is interesting. And another way you could respond to the Fermi Paradox to try to bring things back to numbers, or to at least a reasonable hypothesis, is known as the Drake equation. Now, the Drake equation was created by, what is his name? Dr. Frank Drake. And this is an equation that has a lot of different variables to determine the probability of life existing on a planet. Okay, and some of the different variables he has in his equation is the average rate of star formations in the galaxy, fraction of stars that actually have planets in them, fraction of planets that actually develop into life, and another thing, as I mentioned earlier, the importance of not just life, but also the fraction of planets that develop intelligent life on them, because that is a significant difference when you're talking about being able to see the presence of aliens in the universe or other life forms out there, is that they're intelligent, they're able to control their environment, adapt, react, and construct things. And then also the civilizations that have developed communications and the length of time such civilizations release detectable signals. So those are some of the variables within the Drake equation to determine the probability of extraterrestrial life and how prevalent it would be in the universe. Now, the interesting thing to note about that is that we don't have any sample size for that other than one, which would be us. So it's hard to say for certainty what any of those answers would be to any of those variables in the Drake equation. All you can do is assume, create your own judgment about the variables, and go from there. So it's up to a lot of debate. Some people who think life is more prevalent, intelligent life is more prevalent, will weigh on the high end on some of those, and other people will weigh on the low end. And I try to be objective and open-minded about these types of things. So I don't really have super strong views one way or another. Like I said, I think intelligent life is probable. It's not impossible. I think it's pretty rare, though. I don't know. I guess I don't know if I would use the word probable, but it's not impossible. It's possible. That's the way I'd put it. So feel free to let me know what you think about that. Something interesting to think about. If you want to think about something late at night, do some reading, do some research into that. Hold on, someone here in my group wants a sword. Let's see if I can get him a sword here. I don't know if this will work. Last time I tried doing this for somebody, wouldn't let me trade it. Didn't work that time either. Not eligible to receive the sword. Oops, wrong button. My bad. Lost my train of thought for a second there. Oh yeah, so we're talking about the Fermi Paradox. So yeah, the Drake equation is one way to try to respond to... Don't okay me. I literally tried. Alright, yeah, the Drake equation is one way to try to respond to... What level is this person? Item level is probably too high. Yeah, the Drake equation is an attempt to respond to the Fermi Paradox and come up with some kind of reasonable estimate as to the number and the probability of life, intelligent life existing in the universe. But in all reality, we just have no idea. We just don't know for certain. But like I said, given how unlikely it was for us to exist in the first place, it seems as equally unlikely that there would be a lot of other life forms existing in the universe. But again, when we're talking about the universe and vast number of planets and galaxies and stars out there, even if it's highly unlikely, you'd still end up with a lot of life that could potentially develop in the cosmos just because of the sheer vastness and size of it. But when I use the word unlikely that life would develop, I mean significantly unlikely, to the point where you're talking about it being basically undetectable and almost unknowable for a long, long time. Again, it would be cool if I was proven wrong, or it would be cool if that, within the next 5-10 years we discovered some alien civilization, made contact with them. It just seems very unlikely. Another thing you have to consider too for the Fermi Paradox that I didn't mention is another filter, are cosmic events. So this is kind of interesting. You look back at the history of our own planet, planet Earth, we have gone through numerous cosmic events, even up to relatively recently. Whether it's global warming, ice ages, gone through numerous ice ages, cosmic activity, whether it's cosmic rays, solar radiation, solar flares, global flooding, volcanic events, things like that, which tend to bottleneck or wipe out entirely different species and different life forms living on the planet. So in the history of the Earth, something like over 90% of all species that have lived on Earth have gone extinct. People think about extinction. A lot of people try to blame it all on humans, and yeah, we contribute in some ways, but in other ways, we are totally innocent. Most of the species that went extinct far before we ever entered the picture. And there's even debate as to some of the species, whether or not we played a large role. But that's kind of neither here nor there. Just know that there are lots of different events that can cause the extinction of certain species. And even if that's other species that cause the extinction of species, for example, the dinosaurs, when those were prevalent in the Earth, for example, humans weren't around, but their ancestors were. In the form of mammals, lower mammals like rats and things like that were around, but they were dominated and basically subdued by larger reptiles like dinosaurs. So it wasn't until after the fall of dinosaurs that humans were able to, and their predecessors were able to evolve and develop. So, interesting to think about. There's a lot of different factors basically with this paradox. There's a lot of different angles you can come at it from. There's a lot of different things that have to be weighed and considered. So, a lot of it's just a big what if, which can be kind of the fun about it. It's thinking about different things from different angles and considering other things. Another thing to consider as a great filter could be the development of advanced technologies. We think of advanced technologies as good, and certainly they can be good, but there's a lot of positives and negatives to just about everything, including technology. I'll give you an example. The same technology that can create a nuclear reactor can also create a nuclear bomb. The same fire that heats you can also burn you alive. So, technology is not always great, and not always good. It is more about how you use technology, and I think morality and ethics plays a part in that as well. But for instance, even if it wasn't an accident like a global Chernobyl situation takes place where we have a nuclear meltdown and that significantly reduces the size of the population, if not destroys it, there could also be things such as war. We had a time period during the Cold War where the world was on the brink of nuclear Armageddon. And so far we have narrowly escaped it. There's been a few close calls. But that's not to say that all civilizations and all other species necessarily escape that. And another thing to consider too, people often are starting to talk about now, is the rise of artificial intelligence, artificial life. Now, think about that. Most people think about that as also a good thing. And I'm not here to argue that Skynet's going to happen or anything like that, but you never know what could happen and how AI could not just directly affect humanity and the way we perceive the world and the way we operate in it, could also have very significant indirect effects on our environment, on the way we live in our economy. For example, if AI and robots end up taking over the workforce, that could displace a large number of Americans, not just Americans, obviously, a large number of people throughout the world. So that could have a significant impact on the race, or the future of the human race. Or perhaps technology develops to a point where biological life becomes obsolete, seemingly, to the developers, and they either merge with the AI and the robots, or else they just simply give in to their new their new robotic overlords and let the aliens or let the robots do whatever they want to do. So that's another thing to consider. So again, we're jumping around a lot of different topics here, but I'm just kind of letting my mind wander, thinking about these things out loud. Hopefully it's making sense. If you have any different points of view or any other insight to add to the conversation, as always, feel free to let me know in the comments. It's fascinating to think about these things from different angles and to consider all possibilities. Go ahead and tell this guy to open that door for us now as we start to approach the last few bosses of this instance. Okay. Let's start this fight here. Another thing to consider about the Fermi Paradox, and do aliens exist in the universe? If they did, would we know how to detect them? We assume that all aliens would be using radio signals, radio waves, similar forms of communication that we use, but that's not necessarily the case. In fact, radio waves travel very slowly throughout the universe. It could take them thousands and thousands of years just to get to the nearest star, and it does not seem like a very efficient form of communication throughout the cosmos. So if you were an alien life form and you had a colony you were trying to communicate to, odds are you probably wouldn't use radio signals, but rather some other form of technology. And since we only developed the ability to listen to radio signals relatively recently, odds are we wouldn't have picked up any alien radio signals anyways, although there are a few strange signals we've picked up. Maybe I'll talk about that in another video. So yeah, that's something else to consider. What kind of technology they'd be using, but not even just the technology they'd be using in terms of radio signals, but maybe they just are so alien to us we really have no way of communicating with them at all whatsoever. For example, what if they use telepathy and they communicate through their mind? They have no need for spoken word or anything like that. It'd be interesting to see how they would communicate in a global or galactic scale. Another thing, a little bit different angle of looking at it, is maybe there's just a bottleneck with technology. Maybe it can only go so far. One specific example I can think of this is, what if the speed of light is a hard and fast rule, as we know it to be now? You can't travel faster than the speed of light. That would be against the rules of physics that we know today. But a lot of people have the idea that maybe in the future we'll be able to develop technology or use some kind of wormhole, some kind of hyperdrive system to be able to surpass the speed of light, or if all else, warp through space and time rather than breaking the speed of light in order to travel fast throughout the universe. But perhaps it's not even possible to do that. That would make it very, very hard and difficult to travel around the universe, colonize, and things like that. It takes an enormous amount of time, thousands and thousands and millions of years, to go from galaxy to galaxy, star to star. So if aliens did that, or were stuck at that point, perhaps they would not make it a priority to travel as much, or it just would not feasibly happen as often and as much as we think it would. Maybe I'll talk about different methods of traveling through the cosmos, potentially in the future. Something else I think about. So yeah, it's another thing to think about with the Fermi Paradox, is technology. If we don't kill each other, kill ourselves, destroy ourselves, maybe the AI we develop will kill us, destroy us, render us obsolete. Maybe we'll merge with them. Things like that. Going back on the line I was just talking about briefly earlier, where I mentioned that perhaps aliens decide not to travel because they can't break the speed of light. Well, what if, rather than them not traveling because they can't break the speed of light, what if they just don't want to? They just don't see a need to continue to spread themselves amongst the stars like we humans do. Humans have an innate tendency, an innate drive to want to colonize, to want to spread out, to want to claim things, take ownership of things, and to develop land and resources, and change our environment and reproduce. What if these same aliens potentially don't have those same drives? They would be much happier staying on their own home planet and just maintaining and doing what they want to do there, or maybe they develop other technologies This is where you can get into the simulation theory. What if they develop virtual reality, other kinds of simulation devices and technology, and they just decide to go and live in the singularity? And they just become one with the computer. It's another possibility. And that gets into an issue of consciousness, which again, man, all these topics could be great videos for another day. So if you want to hear about any of these topics, feel free to let me know. I will be more than happy to share you my thoughts and opinions about them. But consciousness is an interesting one. You could somehow upload or download your consciousness into a computer or other device. What would that say about life as we know it? How would that change things? Going back kind of towards the beginning of the video to wrap things up a bit here as we approach the last boss, I think there are numerous, incalculable improbabilities to developing intelligent advanced life. We have a lot of problems here on Earth with the development of our own species that we have not been able to solve as of yet. Not to say they're not solvable, but a lot of them are very, very insane when you think about it. And without things being just right, Goldilocks conditions, life would not exist, and intelligent life wouldn't exist. Another one that just comes to mind randomly thinking about it is the moon, controlling the tide and gravity, and also the solar system, the planets, Jupiter and Saturn being huge, large bodies of gravity that, and also the moon also takes asteroids and other space debris that might otherwise have hit planet Earth and caused more havoc and destruction, and absorbs them rather than it hitting us here. So that potentially allows life to evolve and develop. So something else to think about as another I wouldn't say necessary condition for life to exist, but a very helpful condition indeed. So yeah, all these different things that have to happen, from not just from like the perspective of the actual organism itself, like I said, developing from single cell to multi-cell, the origin of life. We don't know how life could come from nothing, from non-life on Earth. That's a huge mystery. One of the theories is that it might have come from another planet, and that's definitely a possibility, but then, I mean, it just pushes the question back a step further. Where did that life come from? So there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, a lot of interesting things to think about, a lot of steps that brought us to the point where we're at now, and that has not even, trust me, has not even scratched the surface of the different possible explanations and questions about the Fermi Paradox, life developing on Earth, aliens existing. But those are some of my jumbled thoughts about the matter. Hopefully it wasn't too confusing, like I said, and hopefully you can follow along. Probably going to do some more of these types of videos, though. It's fun to think about, fun to talk about as I continue to level my warrior. Maybe I'll talk about some other topics. Thanks for checking out my channel, everyone. Appreciate you watching the video. Please give it a like and subscribe. And write me a comment down below. What do you think about these types of videos? What do you think about this topic? Do you have any opinions? Feel free to share. I'd love to do some more videos about this again in the future, and let's have a discussion. Again, thanks for watching, everybody. Take care. Have a good one.